their prisoner handling consisted of interrogation, torture, and execution. There were 7 times when I thought that we might be killed, myself and my 2 Cambodian colleagues. When I was in Mozambique, East Africa, I was running a large demining program in the north of the country. It was there that, doing the least dangerous thing I ever did, I was blown up, losing my right arm and leg. And I made one decision when we were first taken prisoner that made the difference between life and death. And that was to never assume the role of victim. I thought that my life was over. What I've learned, having lost 2 limbs and everybody else, my family, my friends, then saying, his life is over. My story is that of someone who has climbed out of a deep, dark hole and has to know the way, go the way, and show the way.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our audience from around the globe. This is your host, Sid. To our new subscribers, welcome to the fold. And to our returning listeners, it's wonderful to have you back with us for another episode of Sit Down with Sid podcast, where we bring people together one conversation at a time. A quick note. Today's conversation explores the limits of human endurance. Our goal is to provide a forum to examine the psychological fortitude required to navigate extreme crises and the profound resilience that can emerge from trauma. Joining us today is Chris Moon, a former officer in the British Army. Chris transitioned into humanitarian landmine clearance with the Halo Trust. He's a rare survivor of both a kidnapping by the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia and just 2 years later, a landmine explosion in Mozambique. Despite losing his right arm and leg, Chris was running the London Marathon within a year of his injuries. Today, he's a world-renowned ultra-distance runner and a champion for human resilience. Chris, as we continue our Survivor series, your journey of beating the odds is a masterclass for our audience. It is a profound honor to have you here, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a great privilege for me to have the opportunity to share my experiences with you all. And what I'd really like to do is explain that our challenge in life is to rise above the things that drag us down. And for each of us, our challenge in life is to find our own purpose, our own meaning, and how we can add value to the universe. And I think that we can only do that by stepping outside of ourselves. So I would encourage everyone, and thank you so much for joining and listening, to start thinking about what can we do to step beyond self, to see beyond ourselves, to see the bigger picture of the world, to understand that perhaps in life, we might think that it is having something that makes us happy, but it is not. What I have learned, and I've been privileged on my journey to be in many no-hope situations where I thought that my life was over. What I've learned, having lost 2 limbs and everybody else, my family, my friends, then saying, his life is over. What I've learned is that it's not having things that makes us truly happy. That is very empty and soon becomes meaningless. What makes us happy is doing things. It is being able to interact. It is being able to talk to new people. It is getting outside of ourselves. And I think that our journey in life is to see beyond self, to connect with the bigger picture, to connect with other people, other values. And my journey through life has been about saying, well, what do I think it's all about? What is this thing with different nationalities, different religions? There are so many differences in the world, different sexualities, male, female, lesbian, gay, transitioning, feeling that you're in the wrong body. I have absolute sympathy for that, because at the end of the day, I have a passionate belief in the dignity of the individual. And that is where the profound growth of the human race will be, in respecting the rights of the individual. I have a passionate belief in the dignity of the individual. And where things go wrong are when people violate the rights of others. We should be pursuing a utopia of tolerance, a utopia of I'm okay, you're okay. Let's find a way to get along together. And whilst I have been a soldier, I believe passionately that we have to stand up when the rights of others are violated. I absolutely believe in the rule of law, and yet laws should be made for people to protect the rights of the individual, unless, of course, they are violating the rights of others. And when they are violating the rights of others, that is when law enforcement needs to get involved and restrain and hold accountable in law. Because laws are essentially the cement of society that hold the whole brick wall together. And yet here is the dilemma, because you can have people with very strong values who say that that cement is our values. Let me give you an example. The German Nationalist Social Party, known as the Nazis in the Second World War, they had extremely strong values, which led to the murder, to the biggest genocide in the history of the world. And yet they had extremely strong values which they adhered to. And so what those values ignored was the rights of the individual. But also, there were some good things that they did. They built good roads, they had an ordered society. But what it starts to teach us, if we choose to learn, is that our biggest enemy is not another race, creed, or religion. Our biggest enemy is the violence itself. And we need to learn that as human beings. You look around the world today, our biggest enemy is not a different nationality, not a different creed, not a different religion. It is the violence itself, which may be used by a small minority to gain wealth, to gain territory. And therefore, that is why civil society is more important than ever, that we protect the rights of others. And, well, I believe, I've spent more than 5 years of my life in war zones, and I believe that violence breeds violence. And my hopes and prayers are that one day humankind will come to realize that we need to focus on our similarities, because I have been privileged to travel the world. I have been to every continent on the world, and what I've recognized is that our similarities are greater than our differences if we choose to focus upon them. And when people are not focusing on those, then what we realize before God is that actually it's about self-interest. Much of it may be about anger from the past and injustice. And the hardest thing for human beings to deal with is justice. And that pain will burn deep. And sadly, if not handled well, will lead to more injustice. And as we evolve as the human species and looking at how incredibly advanced our technology is, we need to start recognizing we need to control uncivilized behavior. It's a word that used to be used when I was a child, civilized. What does that mean? Civilized. We respect civil society, ordinary people going about their business without necessarily military society needing to control them. And so I think we need to have more conversations around what is civilized, what is in the interests of most people, what will protect the rights of most people. Most of the soldiers I've met who were volunteer soldiers signed up because they thought they were protecting the rights of civil society. And we need to move the role of the military more into actually what will we do to become peacemakers and peacekeepers rather than let's go out there and destroy everything. Let's go out there and do this mission and break everything up. We need to have an understanding of consequence because throughout history, violence would tend to lead to violence. But here is the difficult issue. I believe that human beings will do bad things if they can get away with it. You see, the mark of the individual, in my experience, is not what they do. It is what they would do if they didn't think they would be found out. Accountability is everything. It's a really old experiment, but people were taken off the street in the US a long time ago, I think nearly 100 years ago, but not quite. And they were told that they were taking part in a government experiment. And what they did was they were asked to help with a government experiment, and what they were doing was totally legal. And they were asking questions of a prisoner behind a cage screen who had done terrible things. And they were given a list of questions and answers. And when the prisoner gave a wrong answer, they were asked to press a button, which gave them an electric shock. And what happened was, every time they got the answer incorrect, they pressed the button. And then it got to a stage where law enforcement officers came in and said, this is a legal government experiment, please sign here. What you're doing is entirely within the law. What we want you to do is just keep going if you're prepared to participate. But there is no accountability for you because you are part of the government and we need to continue. And so they carried on with that experiment. And it got to the stage where the actor who was behind the screen wasn't being electrocuted, but pretended they were. And it got to the stage where it was lethal. And sadly, most people carried on without questioning it. And that's a really helpful piece of psychology to understand, because if people think that it is within the government, they're protected, they're not going to be held accountable, then they will do the most terrible things. And what we need to understand is this is not monsters or psychopaths or sociopathic people. This is ordinary people who will do the most terrible things unless they are held accountable. Accountability is everything. There's another aspect to this from the Stanford experiments in 1973 in the university. They ran an experiment with students who were prisoners and other students who volunteered to be law enforcement. And what they did was they arrested them, they put them through the normal arrest channels, and then they put them into a prison in the base of the university to study how people reacted. And quite quickly, some of the prisoners sided with the guards and said, you do everything they say, or else we'll be in trouble. So they sided with the guards. Some of them said, this is really stupid. We shouldn't be doing this. The guards are being completely out of control. And then the majority of people went on with it. But quite quickly, some of them completely broke down and had to be taken out of the experiment. Whilst the experiment continued, gradually the prisoners sided with the guards and said that it's in our best interests not to challenge them. And they even threatened violence to those prisoners who challenged the guards. But then eventually the experiment had to be stopped because the guards became more and more brutal. And so my point is very simple. That is that it is within human nature to be brutal, to take advantage of situations, and to violate the rights of others unless they are held accountable. And that is why the rule of law and the ability to enforce it is so important, because we need to understand throughout history the mark of the individual is not what they do, it is what they would do if they didn't think they would be found out. So accountability is everything, and our societal structures should be created to allow that accountability and transparency. Where there's transparency, that's great. And one would have hoped that in this digital media age, that we would have more transparency. But sadly, there seems to be more polarization. And people go to look at things that they believe in. And I would say at this point, let's talk about the power of belief.
Wow, Chris.
It is the most extraordinary thing. So here's the question, where do we get our beliefs from? I had a defining moment. Let me tell you about my life story. I grew up in an agricultural community. Both my grandfather and my father served in the First and Second World Wars to do their duty, as they believed it, to protect society. There's something that I learned when I was blown up many years later, protecting humanity. I was a British Army officer. I left to work for a charity clearing landmines to protect the innocent. And I am very proud that I did that. And I don't regret a thing, even though I've lost my arm and leg. I would do it all again because of this passionate belief in the dignity of the individual and the right of the individual to live in peace and without being bullied and without being coerced. But when I went to clear landmines in Cambodia, so I grew up farming, I think we also need to put into context military service, because after I'd served on counter-terrorist operations for many years, I was speaking to a retired brigadier from the intelligence corps in the British Army. And he was saying to me, yes, I went to this country and I met these freedom fighters and they were fighting against us. And then I talked to them. And then I realized after a while that our similarities were greater than our differences. And we were both fighting for the same thing. And that's what we need to start to understand. Our beliefs may get in the way. And we know that, firstly, lose the judgment. In every religion, as far as I understand it, and I'm very happy to stand to be corrected, that people say only God can judge. And I think there is immense truth in that, that only God can judge, because when you look at what happens when human beings start judging, it all goes horribly and brutally wrong. We need to learn to be tolerant and respectful of other boundaries and beliefs. And we may not agree with them. But I'm reminded of the words of Voltaire. Voltaire, an ancient, wise person, that's how I would describe him, a wise thinker, said, I may not agree with what you are saying, but I would die for your right to say it. We must have this respect between individuals and nationalities. And it is when that respect goes that we see the most awful excesses of violence. Because we need to come back now to the power of belief. When we look at belief, I remember when I lived in Cambodia, I was clearing landmines for 3 months. I come from a farming background. They had a pig in the next door house to mine, and they tied a rope round its leg, and they put a little stick in the ground. And that little pig squealed and squealed and pulled until it realized it couldn't pull the stick out of the ground, and it gave up. But I watched that pig for 3 months as it grew every day, because the houses were on stilts. You go up to the balcony, and every time I went up and down the stairs, I'd look next door, and I'd watch this great big strong pig, and it would never, every time that rope went tight, pull it. It just would. Every time the rope went tight, it never pulled. And I was confused, because I know from my agricultural background, the pig is the most intelligent of all farm animals. If you put it in a maze, if there's food involved, it will work out how to get out. It has the ability to cognitively appraise. So I knew that that pig was intelligent, strong enough and capable to get out of there. So why didn't he do it? Well, they sold that pig, they sent it to market, and I watched. After 2 days, they replaced it with this little tiny wiener pig. And that pig squealed and squealed. It was tied on by its leg and tried to break free. But after 2 days, it realized it couldn't do it. And as it grew, they untied the rope, they tied it back on again. After 3 months, literally after 2 days, it stopped pulling. But after 3 months, they sent it to the market and replaced it, and the cycle started again. The important thing we need to realize is the pig did not pull the stick out of the ground, even though it was capable, strong, and intelligent. Intelligence had nothing to do with it. It was simply because it didn't believe that it could. So now humanity need to challenge our beliefs so that our intelligence can problem solve to find peace. And I've been all over the world. I've had the privilege of traveling to many different places, many different religions. And of the different religions that I've experienced, I have always found them willing to explain what they believe and to enter into conversation and to say, look, this is what we believe is important. And they're quite happy for you to have a different view, But what they want to do is discuss. And I think that the tragedy of the modern world is that we have lost that ability to listen, to understand, and create a relationship and understanding. But also, we must have respect for other views. So I believe absolutely the mark of the individual is not what they do, it's what they do. If they didn't think they'd be found out, we need the accountability of law. And that must be able to be enforced. But also, we need to look forward. I'm optimistic. I think that sadly, much of social media has created division because it comes back to belief. We know that human beings will seek to reinforce their beliefs. So let me give you an example. If you have a belief that you are bad at maths, when you come to do a calculation, you will think, oh, that's a bit difficult. And then you'll say, oh, I'm bad at maths, I can't do it. So that's just a very simple example. And yet, with beliefs, we also need to recognize that it is within the world's capacity, within living memory, and within lifestyles to actually say, well, we can create a better world. It's whether or not we choose to do that. And it would seem to be a small minority of the population that think that going to war is the answer. But in the long-term history of the world, let's actually start to understand what the causes of war are. We need to be better at understanding that. And you can't just park this humanitarian stuff in an organization like the United Nations and say, well, let's let the United Nations deal with humanitarian issues, because they can't. You have to have the ability to enforce it. But I believe that also what we need to do is start listening to people, because most people, what they want is they want to live in peace. They want to contribute to society, and they want their children to have a better lives than they do. But coming back to it, for each of us, we must find our own value and what is our purpose in life and meaning. And for me, that was about, I did my service in the military. I believe that was a really good thing to do. I was an officer in the military police because I wanted to stop people doing bad things. And then I did that. And then I chose to work for a charity clearing landmines. When I went to work for this charity clearing landmines, I passionately believed what we were doing was right. It was about protecting the innocent. It was about getting rid of the debris and pollution of war. And in the bigger picture of life, when you look how many people there are on this planet, how rapidly our population has expanded. And when, this is not just our planet. Human beings are not the only creatures on this planet with a right to life. The animal population, we can do so much to allow them to thrive. And if we live closer to nature, well, then absolutely that's good for our health, our mental well-being. And we're meant to be part of this incredible flora and fauna infrastructure on the earth. And yet somehow we lose sight of that and seek to exploit and destroy. I'm a farmer by background. We have the capacity to create enough food easily for the whole planet. There was a study from Imperial College London years ago, which pointed out that, well, sadly, 3 times more people on the planet are dying from obesity-related illness than malnutrition. And whilst I realize that does not help those people with malnutrition, it is an uncomfortable fact that we need to address. And so, when we look at the future of our planet, absolutely, it is brilliant that we're looking at ways of conserving energy, but it needs to be done. You know, the great brains of the world now should be focused on how we conserve our planet, create more habitats for the natural creatures of the world, rather than putting the great brains of the world into how we can create more drones to kill more people, to destroy somewhere. So, you know, it comes back to this simple principle. The great brains of the world should be saying, how do we conserve our planet? How do we create a cohabiting existence in which we shine brightly, help each other, and create more natural environment for the life on this world to thrive and survive? And whilst it may seem like a completely altruistic dream, all of this is obtainable. And we need to shift thinking. Our social media, some of it is responsible, some of it is not. But when you actually get to talk to individuals, this is the kind of view that they will express. So I'm proud I want to clear landmines and destroy the debris of war. I did something that I believe was right. I got blown up doing the least dangerous thing I ever did, walking in a safe area. I lost my right arm and leg. I then was told that I was going, well, I should have died in that minefield. I
Chris,
was died apparently
I'm sorry,
revived.
may I interrupt you for a second here?
Yes, please do.
Uh, yeah, it's great you're bringing that up. So if you don't mind, if you would like to share your story, if you feel comfortable sharing your story from your kidnapping by the Khmer Rouge to the moment your life changed in the Mozambique minefield, please take away from here. And if you don't mind sharing the whole story with our audience so they can understand the resilience that you possess. And I appreciate the message that you have shared. It has so much depth. And being an immigrant coming to this country, I can totally relate to that. And I appreciate that my grandfather was in army. So I really appreciate what you're saying. And I really hope that the younger generation takes these words to their heart, because what you are sharing is wisdom 101, and coming from someone who maybe the doctor said should not be here. And here you are, thriving,
Sure.
sharing
Okay,
your wisdom
so
with the world. Please.
so when I was working for this charity clearing landmines, we were given a guarantee of security by the United Nations. Something happened that was not predicted, and we were ambushed, and I was taken prisoner. And the Khmer Rouge history is easily researched online. Their prisoner handling consisted of interrogation, torture, and execution. There were 7 times when I thought that we might be killed, myself and my 2 Cambodian colleagues, and something happened that I hadn't predicted, and they hadn't predicted, which was the Khmer Rouge moved special forces through the jungle. And I made one decision when we were first taken prisoner that made the difference between life and death, and that was to never assume the role of victim. I then pursued the strategy that I've just talked about in the previous 30 minutes, which is focus on your similarities, find ways to understand how we can connect. And we realized in the end our similarities were greater than our differences. I was able to persuade them to release us. And I was one of the few Westerners to have survived that experience. But what I would say to people to use in their daily lives: never assume the role of victim, take ownership, don't give up, and keep on keeping on. Those 3 lessons served me well when I was in Mozambique, East Africa. I was running a large demining program in the north of the country. It was there that, doing the least dangerous thing I ever did, I was blown up, losing my right arm and leg. I was then taken um, to a hospital, and the hospital looked at me and said, well, the only reason I survived in the minefield was because I had really good medical experience and training. And so I treated myself. When I got to the hospital, they said, this man cannot possibly live. He's lost so much blood. And yet I was then flown down um, eventually to South Africa, and the insurance company had a policy to pay for the repatriation of bodies. So they were flying my body back. And I made it. I was told I'd be in hospital for 6 months in South Africa. I was actually there for 3.5 weeks. And then I came back to the UK, got my artificial limbs fitted, did my first marathon within a year of leaving hospital. And then I became the world's first amputee ultra distance runner when I did the Marathon des Sables. So that's 135 miles. You carry your own equipment. Subsequently, I've done many of these races. But the important thing to explain is my story is not that of a brilliant sportsman who was then trained and guided to be more brilliant. My story is that of someone who has climbed out of a deep, dark hole and has to know the way, go the way, and show the way. And so, what I would say to people is don't give up, find your purpose, work out what's important to you, recognize that absolutely life is not fair. You're going to get knocked down. That's the reality of life. But I have good news because I used to think that you only had to get up one more time than you were knocked over. But that's not the truth. If you think about it logically, you only have to get up the same number of times as you're knocked over. So the important thing here to understand is that actually we make it harder than it is. And this is where it comes back full circle to belief. You have to believe that you can keep on getting up, no matter how many times you were knocked over. The great thing is to keep on keeping on in your own life, no matter how many times you're knocked over, just keep on getting up.
Wow. Chris, if you don't mind, how do you possess such a strong mindset? Is that coming from your military experience, your military background, your training, endurance, and all that?
Most people I know who have a strong mindset have developed it through choice and learning. I'm not naturally positive, but I choose to be positive every day and to spread sunshine, if I can, into other people's lives. Don't look here. If you look here in your own life, I suspect most of us will only find darkness. But if we look out here and we are truly involved in the bigger picture of life and care about other people and how we can impact on them positively, well, then we will walk in the light. And it's a choice. I'm not naturally positive. I choose to be because the price of negativity is too high to pay. The price of negativity is too high to pay. So walk in the light, walk on the sunny side of the street, because we get that choice in life and we don't always realize we have that choice. But find a way.
Wow. I mean, uh, the reason I'm bringing these up is because here you are doing good things. Uh, you're a man of peace. I can see that. Violence should not be there at all. I get that. Human rights, as you mentioned, should not be violated. And I can see how firm you are on that. And I love that because once again, in the social media world that we're living in, it has created more divide amongst us than the essence of humanity. It's like the world is losing its humanity, its essence of humanity. We are human beings. We're supposed to be social to help each other. Uh, my question to you is now, when this happened to you, of course, I mean, you're strong and healthy, and now you lost your leg, your arm, and you said you went down a very deep, dark hole. What was it that helped you to come out of it? If you don't mind sharing,
Yeah,
like,
I'd be delighted to. Okay,
please.
I made a choice after a day when I was in that deep, dark hole to say, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to do this. Whilst everybody expects me to be here, within less than a day, I made a conscious decision to say, right, I will thank God for what I have. I will not focus on what I have lost and what I might possibly gain. I'm just going to focus on what I have and be thankful. And I'm going to focus on what I can do. And I know it's going to be really hard work, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. I will find a way to make the best of my life. And it is that simple. We have a choice every day. Focus on what we have lost and what is bad in our lives, what we don't have, and what is difficult. Or will we choose to be thankful for what we have? Because the problem is, if we focus on something, it draws our attention and we get sucked into it. So if we focus on, I don't have this and I'm not going to have it, that's where you're going to go. And if you're going to say, well, I'm lucky, I'm fortunate that I have the ability to breathe, to move freely, then we can build on that and develop it. So it's all about choice. When you get up in the morning, what will you do to put your head in the right place? What can you do to say, right, I need to get on with today. I need to make the best of it. I need to be thankful. Got to work, but I'll spread some sunshine.
Wow. And I want to ask you, I know you said you were, after losing the lens, you were running marathons. Was that your physical goal to prove your recovery, or was it more like a psychological imperative to reclaim your identity so that the trauma that you went through could not define who Chris Moon is or was?
There were many reasons to run that first marathon, and they were as follows. Number one, I did not wish to be defined and beaten by the badness. I did not wish to be pushed down by the people who said, oh dear, poor you, your life is over. I didn't want them to see me that way or to win. I didn't want to be beaten by the badness because there's badness out there. And also, I realized that there was a positive to losing my arm and leg. If I did this first marathon, I knew that people would want to sponsor me and help me raise money for a charity in Cambodia, helping disabled people with the most awful, awful challenges in life with no resources. And I wanted to show that you could challenge the concept of limitation in your own life and that you didn't have to be defined by a bad experience. So there were all of those reasons. And that was what drove me to do it. Reasons much more important than myself. And if we have reasons more important than ourselves, then we can tolerate almost anything.
Hmm. Wow. And Chris, what do you think? I know you said you traveled the world. You're a motivational speaker, and we have the links of your profile, LinkedIn, Instagram in the description, so our audience can look at it, connect with you. I personally also follow you on LinkedIn as well. Uh, when you travel different parts of the world, are you seeing hatred? Are you seeing political divide? What are you seeing that is making us disconnect? As I said, the essence of humanity is being lost. What are some of the factors or things that you're seeing across the board?
Okay, when I have traveled the world, I have never experienced any dislike because I'm British or different or where I come from. People are interested in where you come from and you have a conversation with them. And if you're interested in them, they're interested in you. Most people are very respectful. And what we must learn is that if we're visiting their countries, we are guests in their country, and we must respect their country and their rights and their rules. And if we do that, then we will realize that our similarities are greater than our differences. And so I've not experienced any um, discrimination. I think in a few places I've experienced, oh, you're a foreigner, so you must be rich, so we're going to make you pay more. Yeah, that definitely exists. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, most people are good people. And I believe that spreading a bit of sunshine and kindness is the most important thing we will do because it will be reflected back in far greater quantity unless you're next to a psychopath, in which case move. Don't hang around. Not everybody gets it. Not everybody's good. Stay out the way of people who will violate the rights of others.
Uh, and do you also do a lot of public speaking for the younger generation, like in
Yes, I
university
do.
classes?
And I'm very keen to pass on these principles because many of them are interesting when you get to talk to them and listen to them. Many of them say, well, what we get on social media confirms stereotypes. It doesn't help us think. It might be funny, it might amuse us, but it doesn't actually make us think and find our own way in life.
Hmm. Wow. Chris, any message that you would like to give to our audience beside everything that you have presented so far in this interview that they should take away, say 50 years from now, to understand the human strength, especially the one that you possess?
Firstly, thank you very much for joining us. Secondly, my message would be never give in to fear. Look, do the best you can to make the best of your life. Work hard, spread a bit of sunshine. If it doesn't work out, find another way. Continually learn. Every day is a school day. And also, if we can spread some sunshine into other people's lives, then that is one of the most wonderful things we can do. But recognize that not everybody gets it. So don't hang around with psychopaths. And also, you know, the great thing is to recognize we have this gift of life. It is our responsibility to make the best of it. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And if we can do something to help others on their journey through life, that will add value and meaning to our own existence. So move towards the light, make the best of life, and enjoy the journey.
Wow, Chris. Uh, Chris, this was so nice having you on the show, and I can appreciate your wisdom and the depth you possess. You know, it is something that has to be admired, and it comes with age. You know, the older we get, the more we will probably in that age group understand the kind of depth you possess. So, you have given us more than a story today. Actually, you have offered us a strategic blueprint for navigating any obstacle in life and removing that hatred that we possess towards each other. To our audience, if this conversation moved you, please share it because in the world of digital noise, your attention is what keeps the legacy of resilience and humanity alive. By listening, you ensure that interviews like this remain a permanent resource for younger generations to come. Chris Moon, I want to personally thank you very much for your courage, for your time, and for sharing your unique perspective with us today. I'm really grateful of having you on the show.
It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much. And to all of the people that have joined us, I thank you. Please spread some sunshine.
Thank you, Chris. Have a wonderful day. It was nice having you. Thank you.